Close your eyes now and let your body settle into wherever you are resting. Feel the weight of the day slowly lifting from your shoulders, your arms, your hands. Let your breath come gently, in and out, slow and easy. There is nowhere you need to be right now. There is nothing you need to do. All you need to do is listen and let the words carry you somewhere far away and long ago, to a quiet and simple world, a world that moved slowly and peacefully, a world lit by candles and warmed by firewood, a world where the days were long and gentle and the nights were soft and dark. We are going back now, very far back, to a time before electric lights, before automobiles, before the hum of machines filled every room. We are going back to colonial America, to the small towns and quiet farmsteads that dotted the eastern edge of a vast and still wilderness. These were simple places, simple lives, lived in rhythm with the sun and the seasons. The people who lived here worked with their hands, rose with the dawn, and rested when the stars came out. Their world was slow and quiet and very, very peaceful. You can imagine yourself standing at the edge of a small colonial village now. The air is clean and cool and smells faintly of wood smoke and pine. The houses are made of timber and stone, with steeply pitched roofs and small, thick-paned windows that glow with the soft light of candles. There are dirt paths winding between the homes, and beyond the village, wide open fields, and beyond those, tall, dark forests stretching all the way to the horizon. Everything is still. Everything is quiet. The only sounds are the distant murmur of wind through the trees and the soft crowing of a rooster somewhere far away. Let yourself drift into this world now. Let the quietness of it settle over you like a warm blanket. We are going to spend a long, long time here, wandering slowly through the days and seasons of colonial life, pausing to notice the small and gentle details, the smell of bread baking, the feel of rough wool, the flicker of firelight on wooden walls. There is no hurry here. There never was. Just breathe and listen and let yourself drift.
It begins before the light comes. Long before the sun touches the horizon, the colonial household stirs. Not with noise, not with sudden movement, but slowly, gently, the way the day always began in this quiet world. The farmer, a man of middling height and weathered hands, opens his eyes sometime in the deep hour before dawn. The room is very dark. Perhaps there is a faint glow of embers left in the fireplace across the room, just enough to give the darkness a faint orange warmth. He lies still for a moment. The bed beneath him is a simple straw mattress, and above him the rope springs of the bed frame hold him in a gentle, slight give. His wife is still sleeping beside him, her breath slow and even. He rises carefully. He does not rush. There is no rushing in this world. He swings his feet over the side of the bed and onto the wooden floor, and the floorboards are cool beneath his bare feet. He sits there for just a moment, letting himself come fully awake, listening to the deep silence of the house around him. Perhaps one of the children stirs in the next room and then is still again. The house settles, as old wooden houses do, with a soft, distant creak. He dresses slowly in the dark, pulling on his linen shirt, heavy and loose, and his woolen breeches, and his thick stockings. His boots are by the door, and he pulls them on one at a time, leaning against the doorframe, taking his time. Then he goes to the fireplace. This is the first and most important task of every morning, keeping the fire alive. He kneels before the hearth and blows gently on the embers, coaxing a small flame from the gray ash. He adds a handful of dry tinder and then a few small sticks and watches the flame grow, soft and orange and warm, casting a gentle light around the low-ceilinged room. The smell of wood smoke rises, familiar and comforting. He adds a larger piece of wood, adjusts it carefully, and watches until the fire is burning steadily. Then he stands and goes out to begin his morning. The air outside is very cold, especially in the autumn and winter months. He steps onto the wooden stoop and pauses. The sky above him is still fully dark, filled with stars, thick and bright and silent above the dark outline of the trees. He stands there for just a moment, breathing the cold air, letting his eyes adjust. Then he walks slowly across the yard to the barn.
Inside the barn, the animals are waiting. The smell of hay and warm animals fills the dim space. He moves among them calmly, because animals sense calm, and a calm barn is a peaceful barn. He milks the cow, and the sound of milk hitting the wooden bucket is a soft and rhythmic sound, a slow percussion that fills the quiet of the early morning. He feeds the chickens, scattering grain from his hand. He checks on the ox or the horse, running a hand along their flanks, speaking to them quietly, just a word or two, soft and low. Then he carries the milk back to the house, stepping carefully over the uneven ground in the faint early light. And by the time he comes back inside, his wife is awake. She too moves slowly in these early morning hours. She wraps a woolen shawl around her shoulders and goes to the fire, which is burning well now, and she swings the heavy iron pot over the flames. She adds water from the bucket near the door. She adds oats, or perhaps cornmeal, and stirs it slowly with a long wooden spoon. The porridge will take time to cook. That is fine. Everything takes time here. Time is the one thing that colonial mornings have in abundance. You can imagine the kitchen now, if you like, in the gentle light of the morning fire. The walls are rough plaster or bare wood. The ceiling is low, with heavy wooden beams crossing from one side to the other. Bundles of dried herbs hang from those beams, lavender and rosemary and sage, and the smell of them mingles with the smell of the fire and the porridge. The table is a simple, heavy thing, worn smooth by years of use. There are wooden bowls on it and pewter spoons. A candle burns on the windowsill, though the first pale light of dawn is just beginning to show through the thick glass. The children will wake soon, but for now, there are these quiet moments, just the two adults moving slowly through the low-lit room, beginning the work of the day without hurry, without any need to rush. The fire crackles softly, the pot steams gently. The house is warm and still. Let that image settle over you. The warmth of the fire, the slowness of the morning, the quietness of a world just waking up. You can feel the warmth on your own face now, and the heaviness in your own limbs, a good heaviness, a resting heaviness, as the story carries you slowly forward.
After a while, as the light outside grows a little stronger, turning from black to deep gray to the pale, washed-out blue of early morning, the children begin to stir. In colonial households, children often slept together for warmth, 2 or 3 of them sharing a bed in a small room off the main hall, or sometimes in a loft above the main room, accessible by a ladder. They slept under heavy quilts that their mother or grandmother or neighbors had pieced together from scraps of fabric, each square a memory of a different garment, a worn-out shirt, an old dress, a piece of trading cloth. The quilts were heavy and warm, and the children burrowed under them until the last possible moment. The oldest child, perhaps a girl of 10 or 11, is usually the first to rise. She climbs down from the loft carefully, her bare feet finding each rung of the wooden ladder by feel in the dim light. She goes to the fire and holds her hands out toward the warmth for a moment, closing her eyes. Then she takes her apron from the peg by the door and ties it on and goes to help her mother. The younger children come down a little later, one by one, blinking in the firelight, their hair tangled from sleep, their faces soft and unguarded the way children's faces are in the early morning. They sit at the table and wait quietly for their porridge. Perhaps the youngest one leans against an older sibling, still half asleep, eyes drooping, shoulders warm and rounded. The father comes back inside from his early morning work, and the family gathers around the table. The porridge is ladled into wooden bowls. Perhaps there is a small pitcher of milk, fresh from the morning's milking, to pour over it. Perhaps there is a piece of bread from the day before, a little hard but still good, and a small pot of butter or jam made from summer berries. The family eats slowly and quietly. There is not much talk in these early morning moments, just the sound of wooden spoons against wooden bowls, the crackle of the fire, the distant sound of wind beginning to pick up outside. After the meal, the bowls are cleared. The children are given their tasks for the day. In a colonial household, even young children had daily chores, small but important parts of the work that kept a family going. A young boy might be sent to gather more wood from the woodpile and stack it neatly by the door. A girl might be set to sweeping the hearth clean of ash, moving the broom slowly and carefully over the stone. An older child might be sent to check on the garden or to carry water from the well. These tasks were done without rushing. There was a rhythm to them, a slow and steady rhythm that matched the pace of everything else in this quiet world. Sweep, pause, carry, set down, stack, step back. Everything slow, everything careful, everything gentle. You can imagine following one of the children now, a boy of perhaps 7 or 8, as he walks slowly around the side of the house to the woodpile. The morning air is cool and fresh on his face. His breath makes small puffs of white vapor in the cold. He picks up a piece of firewood and holds it in his arms, then another, building a small stack in the crook of his elbow. The wood smells sharp and piney. His boots leave small prints in the damp earth. He walks slowly back to the house, pushes the door open with his shoulder, and sets the wood carefully down by the hearth, piece by piece, neat and tidy. Then he goes back for more. This is the morning, slow and quiet and full of small, gentle tasks. The light is growing stronger now, filling the low windows with a soft gray-white glow. The fire is burning well. The house is warm. The family is moving through their morning like water moving slowly along a shallow stream, easy and unhurried. Let your own breathing slow now just a little, in and out, slow and even. You are very comfortable where you are. The story will keep going, slowly, gently, like that quiet stream.
carrying you further into this soft and peaceful world. As the morning grows brighter, the heavier work of the day begins, though even the heavy work of a colonial farm has its own slow and steady rhythm. Nothing sudden, nothing rushed, just the long, patient labor of people who understood that good work takes time. The farmer goes out to his fields. In the spring and summer months, there is planting and tending and weeding to be done. In the autumn, there is harvesting. In the winter, there are fences to mend and tools to repair and animals to tend. But the work is always there, and the farmer walks out to meet it each morning with the same unhurried step. You can imagine a spring morning now. The fields have been plowed in the weeks before, turned over with the heavy iron plow pulled by the ox, the great animal moving slowly and steadily up and down the furrows, while the farmer walked behind, hands on the plow handles, eyes on the ground. The earth is dark and loose and smells deeply of itself, of roots and minerals and the quiet underground life of the soil. Now the farmer walks the furrows with a bag of seed slung over one shoulder. He reaches into the bag and takes a handful of seeds, corn or rye or barley, and sows them with a slow, sweeping motion of his arm. Step, reach, scatter. Step, reach, scatter. The seeds fall in a soft arc and settle into the dark earth. He moves down the row and then turns and comes back up the next row, and the birds come behind him sometimes, soft-footed and quick-eyed, looking for seeds, and he does not mind them much. There are always enough seeds. His wife tends the kitchen garden closer to the house. This is a smaller plot, carefully arranged with rows of vegetables and herbs growing in neat lines. She moves through it slowly, bending to pull a weed here, turning the soil gently with a small tool there, pinching off a dead leaf, examining a new shoot with quiet satisfaction. She knows every plant in this garden the way you know the faces of people you love. She knows which ones need more water and which ones are doing fine on their own. She knows by the color of a leaf or the curl of a stem what the plant needs. The older children help with farm work as soon as they are able. A boy of 12 or 13 might plow alongside his father, learning to hold the handles steady, learning to feel the difference between good soil and compacted soil, learning to read the land the way his father reads it, slowly, carefully, with patience. A girl of the same age might help her mother in the garden, or might be put to work at other tasks closer to the house, tasks we will speak of a little later. The midday rest comes slowly, announced not by any clock or bell, but simply by the position of the sun, which has climbed to its highest point in the sky and hangs there like a pale lantern above the fields. The farmer straightens up from his work and looks at the sky, and then he walks back to the house. The midday meal in a colonial household was often the largest meal of the day. There might be a soup or a stew that had been simmering over the fire since morning, slow cooked and thick and warm. There might be bread, baked that morning or the day before, and butter, and perhaps some salted meat or dried fish. In warmer seasons, there might be fresh vegetables from the garden, cooked simply over the fire or eaten as they were. The family sits together again at the heavy wooden table. The meal is eaten slowly, not because anyone is particularly tired, but that is simply how meals are eaten here. There is no hurry. There is nowhere to be afterward except back to work, and the work will wait. Perhaps some light conversation passes between the adults, a word about the weather, a word about a neighboring family, a thought about the state of the crops. The children listen more than they speak at the table. They eat their soup and tear their bread and look out the small window at the sky. After the meal, there is a brief rest. Even in this busy world of constant work, the midday rest is honored. The farmer might sit in his chair by the fire for a short while, not sleeping, just resting, his eyes half closed, his hands still in his lap. The children might go outside and play quietly in the yard for a little while. Slow and easy games, nothing too exciting, just the simple pleasure of moving through the cool air. And then, slowly, the afternoon work begins again. Let yourself feel the heaviness of a midday rest now. The fire is burning low in the afternoon light. The house is quiet. The work will go on, gently, steadily, but for just this moment, everything is still. Your body is heavy and warm. Your breathing is slow. The story goes on, softly, just beneath the surface of your thoughts. Let us linger now in the kitchen of a colonial home, because there is much to notice there, much that is slow and warm and deeply comforting, and it is worth taking our time to look around and breathe it in. The colonial kitchen was the heart of the home. In many houses, it was the largest room, and the one in which the family spent the most of their waking hours. The fire in the hearth was rarely allowed to go out entirely, because the fire was everything. It cooked the food, it warmed the house, it provided light in the long, dark evenings. Tending the fire was a constant, gentle, meditative work. The hearth itself was large, much larger than a modern fireplace, large enough sometimes to walk part way into. Iron hooks and cranes hung over the fire, and from them the cooking pots and kettles were hung at different heights depending on how much heat was needed. A pot of water could be kept warm at a high hook, barely simmering, while a stew cooked more vigorously at a lower one. The art of hearth cooking was largely the art of understanding heat without any instruments or gauges, just the cook's hands and eyes and long experience. The colonial housewife spent many hours each day preparing food, not because she was slow, but because the food itself took time. Bread, which was the foundation of almost every meal, had to be made from scratch every few days. The process began the evening before, when a small piece of dough left over from the last baking was mixed with fresh flour and water and left to sit overnight to rise slowly in the warmth of the kitchen. By morning, it had grown and softened, and the housewife would knead it, turning it over and over on the floured wooden table, pushing and folding and turning, a rhythmic, meditative motion that went on for some time. The bread was baked in a Dutch oven, or sometimes in a brick oven built into the side of the fireplace. The oven had to be heated first, with a fire built inside it, and then the embers were raked out, and the bread was slid in on a long wooden peel, and the door was sealed, and the bread was left to bake slowly in the retained heat of the brick. The smell that filled the house during this time was one of the warmest and most comforting smells that a human dwelling can produce. Soups and stews were a staple of colonial cooking, and they were made with whatever was available, whatever had been grown or preserved or traded for. A pot of bean soup might simmer on the fire all morning long, growing thicker and richer as the hours passed. A stew of salt pork and root vegetables, turnips and parsnips and onions might cook gently through the afternoon. The slow cooking was not a burden, it was simply the way things were done, and there was something deeply satisfying about it. The way a meal could grow and develop over the course of many hours, becoming something nourishing and warm by the time the family gathered to eat. In the autumn, the kitchen became particularly busy because autumn was the time of preservation. Vegetables were dried or pickled or packed in sand or stored in the root cellar beneath the house. Apples were dried in long slices on string near the fire. Berries were made into preserves and sealed in crocks. Pork was salted and packed in barrels. Corn was dried on the cob and hung in bundles from the rafters. All of this preservation was slow, careful work. Each apple had to be peeled and sliced. Each piece of meat had to be packed and salted just so. Each jar of preserves had to be sealed carefully. There was no rushing any of it. You had to move through it at its own pace, and if you did, the work became almost meditative, a steady and peaceful repetition that filled the hours without demanding much thought. The kitchen smelled different in every season. In summer, it smelled of fresh herbs and hot air and berry preserves. In autumn, it smelled of apples and wood smoke and pickling brine. In winter, it smelled of dried meat and dried herbs and the deep, yeasty warmth of bread. In spring, it smelled of new shoots and the first fresh things coming up from the garden, green and clean and slightly sharp. You can imagine sitting in this kitchen now, near the fire, on a low wooden stool. The fire is burning quietly, and the pot on the hook is steaming gently. The smell of something slow cooking fills the air. Your hands are folded in your lap, and there is nothing you need to do. You can simply sit and watch the firelight flicker on the rough walls and breathe in the warmth and let the hours pass as slowly as they like.
In the colonial world, clothing was not something that changed with the seasons of fashion. It was something you wore because you needed it, and you made it yourself, or had it made, and you wore it until it wore out, and then you repaired it and wore it still. The fabrics of colonial America were mostly wool and linen, with some cotton in the southern colonies and some silk for the wealthiest households. Wool was warm and durable and could be spun and woven at home. Linen, made from the fibers of the flax plant, was cooler and lighter and was used for shirts and undergarments and summer clothing. Spinning was one of the most constant and meditative tasks in a colonial home. A woman or older girl might spin for hours each day, her foot working the treadle of the spinning wheel in a slow, steady rhythm, her fingers drawing out the fiber into a thin, even thread. The sound of the spinning wheel was a constant background sound in many colonial households, a low, gentle whirring that was as ordinary and soothing as the sound of the fire. Visitors would come and go, conversations would happen, children would play on the floor nearby, and all the while the wheel would turn, slowly and steadily, building thread. After the thread was spun, it was woven into cloth on a loom, another slow and rhythmic process, the shuttle passing back and forth through the warp threads, the heddles rising and falling, the fabric growing inch by inch. It might take many hours of weaving to produce enough cloth for a single shirt. A full-length garment might represent weeks of spinning and weaving. Every piece of clothing in a colonial household represented a significant investment of time and labor, and so it was treated with care. A colonial man's daily clothing was simple: a long linen shirt worn loose, woolen breeches that fastened at the knee, woolen stockings, a waistcoat for warmth, heavy leather shoes or boots. In the field, he might wear a broad-brimmed hat to keep the sun off his face. In winter, he might add a heavy woolen coat, long and warm, buttoned to the throat. A colonial woman's dress was also simple, though it had more layers. A linen shift worn closest to the skin, and over that a petticoat or two, and over that a skirt and a short gown or a jacket, and over all of it the ever-present apron that protected her clothing while she worked. She wore a cap on her head, a plain linen cap that covered her hair. In cold weather, she might wrap a thick woolen shawl around her shoulders. Children's clothing was simpler still and practical above all things. Young children of both sexes often wore the same kind of loose gown until they were several years old, and as they grew, they began to wear smaller versions of adult clothing. A girl of 8 would dress much like her mother, in petticoats and apron and cap. A boy of 10 would wear breeches and a shirt like his father. There is something very comforting about the simplicity of this clothing. There were no decisions to make each morning, no choices to puzzle over. You simply dressed in the same clothes you always wore because they were what you had and what you needed. The clothes were heavy and warm and smelled of wood smoke and lanolin. They were not pretty by modern standards, but they were real and solid and sufficient. Imagine pulling on a heavy woolen coat on a cold morning, the weight of it settling on your shoulders, the warmth of it immediately surrounding you. Imagine wrapping a thick shawl around yourself and feeling the world go a little quieter, a little softer. That is how the colonial people dressed themselves against the cold, in heaviness and warmth, in simplicity and sufficiency. Your own body is warm now under whatever covers you have. Let that warmth settle over you. Let the weight of rest press gently down on your arms and legs. There is nothing to do now but let the story carry you onward, slowly, gently, into the afternoon of this quiet colonial world.
Let us walk now, slowly and quietly, through a colonial village and notice what we see. The village is small. It might have 20 or 30 households, perhaps fewer. The houses are clustered together along a central road or green, a wide open space of grass at the heart of the community. Around the edges of the green there might be a meeting house, which serves as both church and community gathering place. A simple building of rough-hewn timber, painted white or left in its natural gray. There might be a tavern, a low building with a sign hanging over the door, swaying gently in the breeze. There might be a blacksmith's shop, from which comes, even now in the middle of the day, the slow and distant ring of iron on iron. There might be a mill somewhere nearby, down by a stream, its great wheel turning slowly in the current. The houses themselves are various, some larger and some smaller, some older and some newer, but most of them share a common quality of simplicity and solidity. They are built to last, built to stand against the wind and the cold, built to shelter a family through many decades of seasons. The walls are thick, the windows small, the roofs steep to shed snow. Inside, the rooms are low and the ceilings close, which helps the heat from the fire fill the space and keep it warm. A larger colonial house might have 4 or 5 rooms, a front parlor, kept a little tidier than the rest, with the better furniture and perhaps a few decorative items, a piece of embroidery on the wall, or a pewter candlestick on the mantel. A kitchen, which is the busiest room. A master bedroom off the kitchen or at the side of the house, and perhaps 1 or 2 smaller rooms for the children or for storage. A smaller house might be just 1 or 2 rooms, everything happening in the same space, the fire serving both kitchen and bedroom, the table doubling as a workspace and a dining table, the family's few possessions arranged simply on shelves or hanging from pegs on the walls. The furniture was plain and heavy, tables and chairs and chests made of local wood, oak or cherry or pine, depending on what grew nearby. Furniture was not decorative in any elaborate sense. It was made to be used, and used it was, every day, until it wore smooth and acquired the quiet beauty of things that have been well used and well cared for over many years. On the walls, there might be a few simple items, a small looking glass, its reflection a little wavy and dim, a calendar or almanac pinned to the wood, a few dried herbs, a rifle or a musket hung over the door, practical rather than ornamental. In a more prosperous household, perhaps a sampler worked in cross-stitch by one of the daughters, with a Bible verse or a simple decoration of flowers and vines hung in a wooden frame. The floors were wooden and cold in winter, and they were swept every day, not mopped or polished, but simply swept clean of the dirt and debris that daily life deposited on them. Sometimes they were sanded or sprinkled with fine sand to scour them clean. There were no rugs in most households, though in a prosperous house there might be a simple braided rug near the fire. Outside, the yard around the house was a working space full of the tools and materials of daily life. A woodpile stacked neatly against the side of the house, a well with a long wooden handle for the pump, a garden nearby fenced against the deer and rabbits, a path worn smooth by daily use between the house and the barn, a few chickens moving slowly through the grass, a cat sitting in a sunny spot near the door. The village as a whole had a particular quietness about it in the middle of the day. People were at their work, inside or in their fields, and the central green was mostly empty. A dog might cross it slowly, nose down. A woman might walk from one house to another, carrying something, moving at the unhurried pace of someone who has walked this same path many times before. A child might run briefly across a corner of the green and then disappear around a building. The sounds of the village were simple: the ring of the blacksmith's hammer, the occasional bark of a dog, the sound of wind in the branches of the large oak at the edge of the green, the distant lowing of a cow, the creak of a door, and over all of it, the constant soft sound of the wind moving through the village from one direction or another, never entirely absent, a sound that has been present in this place as long as the village has stood. Let the quietness of this village settle around you now. Let the sound of the wind be something you can almost hear, soft and distant and soothing. You are very comfortable. The story goes on gently, slowly, like the wind itself. A colonial family was, above almost everything else, a working unit. Every member, from the oldest to the youngest, had a role to play, a contribution to make to the shared life of the household. But this was not something that felt like burden, or at least not always. It was simply the way of things, the natural structure of a life lived in close company with the people you loved. The father was the head of the household in the formal sense, responsible for the land and the larger financial decisions, the trading and the negotiating that had to happen beyond the boundaries of the farm. But in practical terms, the household ran on the labor and skill of the mother, and most people in the village understood this perfectly well, even if they did not always say so directly. The mother of the house was in motion from the moment she rose until the moment she lay down at night. She cooked and cleaned and sewed and spun and wove and tended the garden and preserved the food and nursed the sick and taught the children and managed the household stores and made 100 small decisions every day about what was needed and how to get it. She did all of this at a steady, practiced pace, the pace of someone who has learned to make her energy last through a very long day. And yet there was contentment in it, a deep and quiet satisfaction that came from work well done and a household running smoothly. When the bread came out of the oven just right, when the stew was rich and thick by supper time, when the children were fed and warm and settled, when the candles were lit and the fire was burning and the family was gathered together in the low-lit room, there was a sense of completion, of rightness that was its own reward. The relationship between husband and wife in a colonial household was not always romantic in the way we might think of romance today. It was something quieter and more practical than that, a partnership built on shared labor and shared purpose and the simple intimacy of people who lived every hour of every day in close company with each other. They knew each other deeply, the way you can only know a person when you have worked alongside them through many seasons, through lean years and good years, through illness and health, through births and deaths, and ordinary days without number. Grandparents, where they were present, were important figures in the household. An older woman might take over many of the teaching functions as her daughter-in-law was occupied with the physical work of the household. She might sit with the younger children and tell them stories, or teach them their prayers, or show them how to do simple handwork like braiding or sewing. An older man might sit with the older boys and talk about the work of the farm, explaining what he knew about the land and the seasons from his many years of observation. In larger households, there might be other people living under the same roof, apprentices or servants or poorer relatives taken in out of charity or necessity. In these cases, the household was a small community in itself, a group of people living in close and constant proximity, sharing the work and the fire and the table. The evenings, which we will speak of in more detail later, were when the family came together most completely, gathered around the fire in the warm room, the work of the day done or set aside for the moment, the darkness outside pressing gently against the small windows, the fire crackling and spitting softly, and all of them together in the warmth and the light. Let yourself feel the warmth of that imagined fire now. The fire is burning steadily. The room is warm. You are surrounded by the comfortable sounds of a household settling into its evening, the creak of a chair, the soft murmur of voices, the tick of an old clock. Everything is peaceful. Everything is safe and warm and still. Children in colonial America worked, and they worked from a young age. This is true and important to understand. But they also played, and they found their pleasures in the small and simple things that the world offered them. And those pleasures, though different from what children know today, were real and sweet and sufficient. A young child who had finished the morning's chores might have an hour or so of free time in the middle of the day, especially in the warmer seasons. What did they do with this time? They did what children have always done when left to themselves. They explored, and they invented, and they played. They played in the yard and the fields and the edges of the woods, within the distances that were considered safe by their parents. They caught frogs in the stream and let them go again. They climbed trees slowly, carefully, choosing branches with great deliberation. They gathered interesting stones and pressed flowers between flat pieces of wood. They made simple toys from the materials at hand, boats from bark to float on the stream, dolls from corn husks wrapped in scraps of cloth, balls from wound-up rags. The games children played were often simple and repetitive in the best sense, games that could go on for a long time without needing much in the way of equipment or setup. Rolling a hoop along the road, playing at hopscotch on flat stones, skipping rope with a piece of twisted cord. These were not exciting games. They were calming games, games that occupied the hands and the body and let the mind drift pleasantly. In winter, there was sledding on the snowy hillsides, on simple sleds made of wood, going down slowly and then climbing back up again, the breath coming in puffs and the cheeks pink with cold. There was skating sometimes on the frozen surface of a pond, on rough iron blades strapped to wooden soles. There was the simple pleasure of making footprints in new snow and of watching the sky when the snow was falling, the flakes coming down in steady silence. In summer, there was swimming in the creek or the river, the water cold even in July, and afterward lying in the sun on a flat rock and feeling the warmth dry you slowly. There was picking wild berries along the edges of the fields, the berries small and intensely flavored compared to cultivated fruit, each one a small bright burst of summer. Formal education for children in colonial America depended very much on where you lived and how prosperous your family was. In New England, there were more organized schools, small schoolhouses where children sat on benches and learned to read and write and cipher. In other regions, education was more informal, happening at home, with a parent or an older sibling as the teacher. But whether in a formal school or at home, learning in the colonial world was slow and methodical. Children learned to read from a hornbook, a small paddle-shaped board with a printed alphabet and the Lord's Prayer attached, covered with a thin sheet of translucent horn to protect it. They read from the Bible, which was the most common book in most households, and they copied out passages in careful, deliberate handwriting, pressing the quill gently to the paper, forming each letter with patience. There is something deeply peaceful about imagining a child sitting at a table by the window on a gray afternoon, copying out a Bible verse in careful handwriting, the quill moving slowly across the page, the child's tongue perhaps slightly out, concentrating. The light is cool and pale. The fire burns low across the room. Outside, the wind is moving through the bare trees, and the child writes, slowly and carefully, filling the page with small, earnest letters. Your breathing is slow and even now. You are very comfortable. The afternoon light in that imagined room is soft and pale, and the child is writing slowly, and the fire is burning quietly, and there is nothing to hurry for. Let yourself drift a little, just gently, just easily, on the current of the story.
More than almost anything else, the lives of colonial people were shaped by the seasons. There were no greenhouses to extend the growing season, no furnaces to make winter irrelevant, no electric lights to make all hours equal. The seasons came and everything responded to them. Everything adjusted and adapted and moved in harmony with the great turning of the year. Spring came slowly in New England and the mid-Atlantic colonies, announced first by small signs, a softening in the air, a faint warmth in the midday sun, the first tentative sounds of birds that had been away since autumn. The snow did not disappear all at once. It retreated slowly, pulling back from the sunny sides of buildings first, then from the fields, lingering in shadowed corners and under the north-facing edges of fences for a long time after the rest of the world had turned green again. The colonial family greeted spring with a mixture of relief and energy. The long, dark winter was over. The stores of preserved food were running low, and fresh vegetables from the garden were still weeks away. And so the transition from winter to spring was often a lean time, a time of waiting and small hunger. But it was also a time of hope and renewal, and there was work to be done, and doing the work felt good after the long stillness of winter. The fields had to be prepared for planting, the garden had to be dug and turned, the fences had to be walked and repaired, the posts checked, and the rails replaced where the winter ice had pushed them out of true. The animals were let out of the barn into the fresh air, and they moved into the early spring sunshine with a kind of slow relief, the cows swinging their heads and the horses tossing their manes. Summer was the fullest season, the most generous. The fields were green and growing, the garden was producing, the days were long and warm and full of birdsong. The pace of work was actually at its most intense in summer because there was so much to do during the brief months of growth before the cold came again. But the warmth made the work easier, and the abundance of the season, the fresh vegetables and the fruit ripening on the trees, the milk and the eggs and the occasional fresh meat made everything feel more generous. The long summer evenings were a particular pleasure. After the supper things were cleared away, while there was still enough light to see by, the family might sit outside, on the stoop or in the yard, and simply enjoy the softness of the warm evening. The fireflies would begin to drift across the garden as the light faded, silent sparks in the dusk. The birds would sing their evening songs. The air would cool very gradually, and finally, when it was fully dark and the stars were out and the mosquitoes had become insistent enough, the family would go inside and light the candles and settle in for the night. Autumn was the most beautiful season, and also the busiest. The harvest had to be brought in before the first hard frost, and this was urgent work in a way that the other work was not. The corn had to be cut and dried, the vegetables had to be dug and stored, the apples had to be picked and pressed for cider or dried for keeping. The last of the summer herbs had to be gathered and hung to dry. And the animals had to be considered too, with some of them fattened and slaughtered for the winter's meat supply, and the rest brought into the barn and settled in for the cold months ahead. But in between the bursts of urgent autumn work, there were moments of great stillness and beauty. A morning in October when the frost had come in the night and lay white and fragile on the grass, and the sky above was the deep, clear blue that only comes in autumn, and the trees at the edge of the field were in full color, red and orange and yellow, blazing quietly in the still air. A moment like that would stop you in your tracks, even if you had seen it every year of your life, and you would stand there for a moment with your hands full of harvested squash or your bucket of fresh water, and you would simply look. Winter came quietly most years. The first snow fell overnight sometimes, and you woke to find the world transformed, everything white and muffled and still. The fields disappeared under the snow. The bare branches of the trees caught the snow and held it. The world became very simple, just the dark trunks of trees and the white of the snow and the gray of the sky. Winter slowed everything down to its most fundamental pace. The animals had to be tended, but the farm work was reduced to its minimum. Inside the house, the long evenings were spent in firelight, in spinning and sewing and mending, in reading or listening to someone read aloud, in conversation that was slow and thoughtful, in the comfortable silence of people who have nothing particular to say, but are content in each other's company. Let the seasons drift through your mind slowly, one after another, each one with its own color
and smell and sound, the green of spring, the warm gold of summer, the deep red of autumn, the white stillness of winter, one after another, slow and beautiful and endless, the world turning gently through its ancient cycle.
In the colonial world, the distance between one place and another was a real and significant thing. There were no fast ways to travel. There were no fast ways to send a message. Distance meant time, and time meant patience, and patience was something the colonial people understood very well. Travel happened on foot, or on horseback, or by ox cart, or in rare cases by boat along a river or the coast. The roads between settlements were not smooth or fast. They were dirt tracks, rutted in summer and muddy in spring and frozen hard in winter, winding through the forest between one clearing and the next, following old Native American trails or the paths that cattle had made moving from one pasture to another. A journey of 10 miles might take several hours on foot. The same journey on horseback might take an hour and a half or 2 hours if the road was reasonable. An ox cart was slower still, plodding steadily at its own calm pace, the wheels turning slowly over the rough ground, the ox's great head swinging gently from side to side. You can imagine a man setting out on foot for the nearest town, a distance of 5 or 6 miles along a forest track. He has a message to deliver, or goods to trade, or simply business to transact. He leaves early in the morning, before the dew has dried from the grass, wearing his best coat and his good boots, carrying a walking stick. He sets off at an easy pace, not rushing, because rushing would only tire him before he got there, and the path requires attention, navigating the mud and the roots and the occasional fallen tree. The walk takes him through a long stretch of forest. The trees close in on either side of the path, tall and dark and still. The sound of the settlement falls away behind him, and for a long while the only sounds are his own footsteps on the path, the creak of branches in the wind overhead, and the occasional sound of a bird in the canopy above. He walks steadily, breathing the cool air, watching the path ahead of him. There is no need to hurry. He will get there when he gets there. Communication by letter was similarly slow. A letter written in Virginia might take weeks or months to reach someone in Massachusetts, traveling by post rider on horseback or by ship along the coast, passing through many hands, subject to delay at every stage. When a letter arrived, it was an event, something to be read carefully and slowly, and perhaps read aloud to the household, and then kept, stored in a wooden box or folded carefully into a book. The postal system that existed was rudimentary and unreliable. Letters might be sent with a traveler who was going in the right direction, handed off at taverns and inns along the way, passed along a chain of willing couriers until they eventually reached their destination. You could never be sure when a letter would arrive, or indeed whether it would arrive at all. And so people wrote with this uncertainty in mind, saying what they had to say fully and carefully, because they could not be sure they would have another opportunity soon. News traveled in a similar way. The newspaper existed in colonial America, though it was a small and infrequent publication compared to what would come later. More often, news traveled person to person, passed at the tavern or the meeting house, carried by travelers who stopped for the night and shared what they had heard on their journey. The news might be weeks old by the time it reached a small rural settlement, and might have changed in the telling, grown a little more or a little less dramatic, depending on who had told it along the way.
People understood this and took their news with a certain patience, a certain awareness that what they were hearing might not be entirely accurate, and that the full truth of things would emerge eventually in its own time. There is something wonderfully slow about this world of communication. Every piece of information was precious because it was hard to come by. Every letter was read and reread. Every traveler's report was listened to carefully. And in between the arrivals of news, life went on in its own quiet rhythms, undisturbed by the larger world, contained within the small circle of what could be seen and heard and touched. Let the quietness of that contained world settle around you. No news, no messages, just the slow world of this one small place, and the fire and the family and the seasons. Your breathing is slow and easy. The story moves on gently.
Once each week, the colonial world changed slightly. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but there was a quality to Sundays that was different from the other days. A quality of stillness and gathering. A quality of rest that was prescribed rather than simply taken. Sunday was the Sabbath, and in most colonial communities, especially in New England, the Sabbath was observed with considerable seriousness. Ordinary work stopped, the fields lay quiet, the spinning wheel was still, the tools were put away, and the family dressed in their best clothes and walked to the meeting house. The walk to the meeting house might be short, just a few minutes across the village green, or it might be longer, a mile or two on a cold morning in the gray winter light. Families came from different directions, converging on the central building, nodding to their neighbors, saying quiet good mornings. There was something comforting about this gathering, about seeing the same familiar faces week after week, about belonging to a community that came together in this way. The meeting house was plain inside, white painted walls, high windows letting in clear, cold light, simple wooden pews arranged in rows facing a raised pulpit. There was no ornamentation, no colored glass, no candles in elaborate holders. The Puritan and Calvinist traditions that shaped most of New England valued plainness in worship, believing that beauty in the church building would distract from the interior devotion that mattered far more. The service was long by any measure. It might last 2 or 3 hours, sometimes longer. The minister spoke at length in a measured and deliberate cadence, and the congregation sat and listened. The meeting house was not always warm. In winter especially, the chill settled in the long room, and people sat wrapped in their cloaks and shawls, breathing out small clouds of vapor, their feet cold on the wooden floor. And yet there was something in this long, quiet sitting that was not unpleasant. The voice of the minister, steady and unhurried, filling the room with its cadences, the occasional shuffling of feet, or the sound of a child being settled by its mother, the pale winter light coming in through the high windows, the congregation breathing together, sitting together, week after week after week. After the service, there was often a midday meal shared between families before the afternoon service. Families might gather in someone's home near the meeting house, sharing the food they had brought, talking quietly about the minister's sermon, or the state of the weather, or news of a neighboring family. The conversation was slow and gentle. The food was simple. In the late afternoon, after the second service, the families dispersed again, walking home through the cold or the heat, depending on the season, returning to their households in the fading light. The fires were stoked back up,
The candles were lit. The Sunday evening had its own particular quality of quiet, different from the busy weekday evenings. The family might sit together and read, or sing simple hymns, or simply talk in the warm room while the darkness deepened outside. Imagine that Sunday evening now. The family gathered around the fire, the candle burning on the table, the low murmur of voices, or perhaps a quiet singing, soft and simple, a hymn that everyone knows by heart, the words worn smooth by many repetitions. The fire burning steadily, the darkness outside pressing gently against the windows, everything quiet, everything safe, everything still. As the afternoon moved toward evening in this colonial world, there was a particular quality of light that was unlike any other time of day. The sun would begin to move lower in the sky, and its light would change, becoming warmer and more golden, coming in at a long angle through the small windows and laying bright bars of light across the wooden floors. Dust motes floated slowly in those long slants of afternoon sun, drifting upward and downward without any hurry. The day's work was drawing toward its close. The farmer would be finishing up in the fields or the barn. The wife would be preparing the evening meal, stirring the pot that had been simmering all day, checking the bread, setting the table. The children would be finishing their last chores or playing quietly in the yard in the long evening light of summer, or huddled near the fire on a short winter afternoon. There was a ritual to the end of the day that was as fixed and comforting as the ritual of the beginning. The animals were settled for the night, the barn was checked one last time, the wood was brought in and stacked by the fire, the water bucket was filled, the doors were latched. Step by step, the household secured itself against the night, preparing the safe and warm interior for the long, dark hours to come. The evening meal was the last meal of the day, and it was generally simpler than the midday meal. Perhaps leftovers from the pot, reheated and ladled out into the bowls, perhaps bread and butter and a mug of cider, perhaps a porridge similar to the morning's but thicker, enriched with whatever was available. The family ate by candlelight or firelight, their faces warm and orange in the glow, the shadows deep in the corners of the room. Candles were precious in colonial households, expensive to buy and time-consuming to make at home from tallow or beeswax. They were not burned carelessly. A single candle might light the whole family's evening activities, placed in the center of the table or held in a simple iron holder on the mantel. The light it gave was warm and soft and not very bright by our standards, casting a gentle glow that illuminated the faces closest to it and left the edges of the room in pleasant shadow. In this candlelight, the family spent their evening hours. The mother might sew or mend, her needle moving in and out of the fabric with practiced ease. The father might work on a tool or some small project, the shavings of wood curling away from his knife onto the floor. The children might do their lessons, if there were any, or simply sit and listen to their parents talk, or play quietly with whatever simple toys they had. Sometimes someone would read aloud. The Bible was the most common reading material, and its language, slow and measured and ancient, filled the room with a particular quality of sound. The words worn smooth by centuries of repetition, familiar as the faces of the family, as the smell of the fire, as the feeling of the wooden chair beneath you. Let yourself imagine sitting in that candlelit room now. The fire is burning low and steady. The candle flickers very slightly in some small draft that you cannot locate. Outside, the darkness is complete and quiet. Inside, the room is warm and close and full of the smell of wood smoke and tallow and the evening meal. Your body is pleasantly tired from the long day. Your limbs are heavy and warm. Now the day is truly ending. The evening activities are drawing to a close. One by one, the candles are being extinguished. One by one, the members of the household are making their way to their beds. The children go first. The youngest ones are already asleep, perhaps, having drifted off in their chair or been carried to bed by a parent some time ago. The older ones climb the ladder to the loft or go to their small room, shedding their outer garments in the dark, crawling under the heavy quilts. Their bodies warm the bed quickly because they are young and warm-blooded, and they have had a long day of movement and work and play. They close their eyes almost immediately, and within moments they are asleep, their breathing slow and even, their faces soft in the darkness. The parents sit a little longer by the dying fire. Perhaps they exchange a few quiet words about the day just past, about what needs to be done tomorrow, about some small concern or small satisfaction. Their words are soft, unhurried, the conversation of two people who have spoken together so many times in so many evening rooms that they no longer need to choose their words carefully. They know each other too well for that. Then the fire is banked. This means it is managed carefully before bedtime, the remaining coals raked together and covered with a layer of ash to slow the burning, so that the fire will not go out entirely in the night, but will be possible to coax back to life in the morning. This is a skill and a habit, something done every night without conscious thought, the hands moving through the familiar motions by the faint red light of the embers. The last candle is extinguished. The house goes dark, completely dark, in a way that is difficult to imagine if you have never experienced true darkness. Darkness without street lights or digital screens or night lights. The darkness that people lived in for most of human history. A darkness that is total and soft and strangely comfortable once you are accustomed to it. The farmer and his wife settle into their bed. The mattress gives beneath them. The quilts are heavy and warm. For a few moments they are aware of each other's breathing, and then one of them is asleep, and then the other, and the house is quiet. Outside, the night sounds continue. An owl in the big tree at the edge of the yard, calling softly and steadily into the darkness. The wind in the trees rising and falling, the distant sound of a stream, the creak of the house as it cools, contracting slightly in the night air. These sounds are not alarming to anyone inside. They are the ordinary sounds of night in this place, as familiar as the faces of the family, as comforting as the smell of wood smoke and bread. The stars are out above the village. There are so many of them in this world before electric light, so many that the sky looks thick with them. The Milky Way, a river of light from one horizon to the other. But no one is awake to see them now. The village is dark and still, the houses standing quietly in the dark, the faint smell of wood smoke rising from every chimney, the gardens and fields lying quiet under the starlight. Hours pass, the night turns slowly. The embers in the hearth glow faintly orange in the darkness, shifting slightly as they cool. The children sleep deeply in their beds, tangled in their quilts, dreaming whatever quiet dreams come to children who have spent their day in the simple and wholesome work of a colonial household. The parents sleep soundly, their bodies resting completely after the long day. The night is very long in winter and not so long in summer, but every night has this quality of deep and complete rest, this quality of a world that has finished its work and set it aside and given itself entirely to sleep. There are no worries here that cannot wait until morning. There is nothing that needs to be done in the dark. The work will be there when the sun comes up, patient and waiting. But right now, there is only the darkness and the warmth and the slow and even breathing of sleeping people. Let yourself feel that darkness now, that warmth, that heaviness. Your own breathing is slow and even. Your body is sinking gently into rest. The story is nearly done, but it will end gently, slowly, with you already drifting towards sleep.
Before we leave this world entirely, let us linger for a few moments more. Let us linger in the simple beauty of it, in the slowness of it, in the particular quietness that belongs to a world without haste. There is something in the life of colonial America that our own busy world rarely gives us, and that is this: the feeling that time is enough, that there is enough time for every task, that a good fire and a warm room and simple food and the company of people you love is sufficient, that a day does not need to be exciting or memorable to be a good day, that ordinary is not a failure, that steady and slow and careful and simple are not limitations, but forms of grace. The colonial farmer walking his fields in the morning light was not aware that he was living simply. He was simply living. The colonial housewife kneading her bread was not aware that she was practicing a meditative art. She was simply making bread. The child copying out his letters by the window was not aware that the slowness of his work was teaching him patience. He was simply learning to write. And yet, all of these things were quietly beautiful, quietly, deeply, sufficiently beautiful. You can imagine, if you like, the whole year passing in this small colonial village. The snow melting in March, slowly and reluctantly, leaving behind the dark and muddy ground. The first green shoots appearing in the garden in April, tentative and tender. The long, full days of June, when the sun is high and the world is green and everything is growing. The harvest moon of September, hanging large and orange above the darkening fields. The first snow of November, falling silently on the already bare trees. Season after season, year after year, the village turns through its cycles. Children are born and grow and take on more of the work and eventually become adults with their own households and their own fires to keep. The elders grow old and sit more by the fire and tell their stories to the younger ones. The land is worked and rested and worked again. The houses settle and age and are repaired. Everything is slow. Everything is patient. Everything is sufficient. And now it is night again in that small colonial village. The last light has faded from the sky. The houses are dark and warm. The fires are banked against the cold. The animals are settled in the barn. The streets are empty of any sound except the wind. And everyone is sleeping.